if I lived in China or even Russia or any totalitarian country, maybe I could understand some of these illegal injunctions. Maybe I could understand the denial of certain basic First Amendment privileges because they haven't committed themselves to that over there. But somewhere I read of the freedom of assembly. Somewhere I read of the freedom of speech. Somewhere I read of the freedom of press. Somewhere I read that the greatness of America is the right to protest far right. So just as I say we aren't going to let any dogs or water hoses turn us around, we aren't going to let any injunction turn us around. Well, I don't know what will happen now. We've got some difficult days ahead. But it really doesn't matter with me now, because I've been to the mountaintop. I don't mind. Like anybody, I would like to live a long life. Longevity has its place. But I'm not concerned about that now.
Yes.
I just want to do God's will.
Yes. God's will.
And He's allowed me to go up to the mountain. And I've looked over and I've seen the promised land. I may not get there with you, but I want you to know tonight that we as a people will get to the promised land. So I'm happy tonight. I'm not worried about anything. I'm not fearing any man. Mine eyes have seen the glory of the coming of the Lord.
All power to the people.
All power to the people.
Thank you. I am Brandy Grayson, one of the organizers for Young, Gifted, and Black. We are honored to have you here to take part in our conversation regarding our next actions and what we're about to do in response to the murder of Tony Robinson. I have been part of, well, the Young, Gifted, and Black formed after the non-indictment of Mike Brown, and that's how we came to be. We understand that state violence, we understand that the racism that murdered Mike Brown, that murdered Tony Robinson, is the same racism that leads to racial disparities in Madison, and the increase of racial disparities in Madison. We went from 8-1 in a report, I think, in 2012, and now we're at 11-1. So we are actually we're getting worse. So it's necessary for us to take radical actions because we are in a state of emergency. And I would like to invite other members of YGB, Young, Gifted, and Black, to come forward and introduce yourself real quick. Maybe take 30 seconds.
Hi, I'm T. Banks, a part of the Young, Gifted, and Black Coalition.
I'm Alex Shabazz, part of Young, Gifted, and Black.
Matthew Brownlee, part of Young, Gifted, and Black.
All right.
Amber Mitchell, elder member of Young, Gifted.
Thank you again. I just wanted you guys to be able to put faces to everybody. And I'm going to introduce because she is special. As you know. This woman's amazing. She does awesome work. She has an awesome brain. Her ability to articulate what we're facing and to articulate the historical context of what we're facing is amazing. So I would like to introduce you to M. Adams.
That's a hard act to follow. Okay. So thank you all for coming out to the press conference today. And we are having this press conference in a very particular moment in history. We're having this press conference because a very violent and tragic event happened March 6th where Tony Robinson, a young black youth, was unarmed and was killed and was murdered by Madison Police Department. And so we're having this press conference in direct response to that murder, but also as part of a national trend of black people being murdered, unarmed black people being murdered by the hands of police departments everywhere in the country. So we've seen, and many of us have seen, and many of us have heard and paid attention and followed some of these police murders. So many of us are familiar with Michael Brown in Ferguson, who a lot of what has happened there is starkly similar to what has happened here. Michael Brown was unarmed. He was 19. He was walking down the street. There are several stories told about him, but what we do know about him, as told to us by family members and many members of that community, is he was a very valued young person in that community. Many people loved him, adored him, and looked to him as a valued member of the community. And he was murdered in the streets by a police officer. And many young people who were outraged and hurt and deeply impacted by that took to the streets to demonstrate what power it is that they had around that injustice. We also see a very similar story in New York around Eric Garner. Many of us have seen the footage of Eric Garner, a unarmed black man who was outside, who was asking, "Why are you harassing me? You don't have a right, don't touch me, please don't touch me." And a group of police officers assaulted Eric Garner and choked him to death. They murdered him. A very similar story there. Many young people took to the streets, outraged by the violence happening to them and their community by the police. We also see the same very similar story with Tamir Rice in Ohio, a very young person, 14 years old, who was outside playing with the toy gun that can easily be found at any store, and he was murdered by the police. Many young people, very similar story, were upset, took to the streets, demanding justice. The list goes on and on and on. We also have to remember Aiyana Jones, who was very young, who was asleep on her grandmother's couch in Detroit. The police, the SWAT team, bust into the apartment, the wrong apartment. They throw in a flash bomb, a smoke bomb, and they kill her while she's sleeping. It's a very similar story. Young people are outraged. People are deeply hurt, grieving the loss of a loved one, grieving the loss of a child, and they take to the streets. So the murder of Tony Robinson is a continuation of that trend of young, unarmed black people who are murdered by police departments, and similar to what has happened in those different places, the same is happening here. Many of us young folks are taken to the streets, demanding justice, demanding accountability, are deeply grieving the loss of a loved one, a valued part of our community. And so Madison is certainly part of that national trend of young black people being murdered by the police department. And the police departments in general have a deep history of structural racism and structural violence, and also of interpersonal violence against the black communities. I mean, this information is well documented. There's bodies of research that can account for, or that can attest to, the ways that the police have acted out violence against the black community. First, acting as an institution against folks who are enslaved Africans, and then also acting out very racist and aggressive laws of the black community, also sanctioning violence such as lynching and many other things. And so we're having this particular conversation in that context. Too often, folks would like to divorce Madison from the national trend or the national context. We are here to say that Madison is not entirely different. Madison is not different, in fact, from the national trend that is happening. There's deep structural racism embedded in this police department, and that is being acted out. To show structural racism, all you have to do is demonstrate disparity and disproportionality that is well documented in reports like the Race to Equity report, and also if you look at the Madison Police Department's own reports. It demonstrates disparity. The numbers were just crunched. There's an 11-to-1 arrest rate disparity of black to white, and disproportionality is also demonstrated. And so given this context of how the police as an institution has been acting out structural violence since its inception against the black community, giving that in conjunction with the economic and the social conditions that black people face as a community, the police are acting as an occupying force within the black community.
Yes.
Now I say this to you not as a matter of opinion and not as a matter of lived experience and emotional trauma, though all of those things are extremely important. I am saying that to you as a matter of science and historical analysis.
That's right.
And it is not just me who has come to this.
Yes.
This has been said several times over. So James Baldwin said it in '66 in several magazines. Eric Holder recently, as Attorney General, maybe former, I don't know if he's officially retired yet, but Attorney General has also said it about Ferguson and also police departments nationally. So a small clip.
I, like you, understand that the need for this trust was made clear in the wake of the intense public reaction to last week's grand jury announcement. But the problems we must confront are not only found in Ferguson. The issues raised in Missouri are not unique to that state or to that small city. We are dealing with concerns that are truly national in scope and that threaten the entire nation. Broadly speaking, without mutual understanding between citizens whose rights must be respected and law enforcement officers who make tremendous and often unheralded personal sacrifices every day to preserve public safety, without that kind of interaction, without that kind of trust, there can be no meaningful progress. Our police officers cannot be and cannot be seen as an occupying force disconnected to the communities that...
Thank you. So that was Eric Holder, Attorney General, making a statement about what he was witnessing and had been experiencing, and also the things that he was working on in relationship or in regards to Ferguson, but not just Ferguson, he points out. Not just Ferguson, whose police department is riddled with structural racism, but also other police departments as a whole. And so given this, given that police departments are filled with structural racism, and might I add, not only here locally have we seen that structural racism show in disproportionality and racial disparities, we also have heard locally how this particular police department is following national uses of force, national protocol, and also other national standards, which are filled with structural racism, which are embedded with structural racism. If you are following a national standard, you are following the standard of Ferguson, you are following the standard of Milwaukee, Detroit, Chicago, and so many other police departments who we know are deeply impacted and deeply embedded with structural racism. And given that, and given the amount of resistance that's happening in the streets, though that is great and very important, and we, Young, Gifted, and Black, take that very seriously and will continue to do so, we still, based on historical analysis and social movement science, can see that we are not yet in a place in our movement where we would expect to see an indictment or a conviction of murder of a police officer for murdering a black person. And to give an example of what I mean, there was a point in this history 100 years ago where if there was a public lynching that had taken place, that we did not at all expect to see any police interference in that, and we did not at all expect to see anyone be convicted of murder because of that. What's different then and now is that an entire social movement has happened where enough political power of black people has built up to force the state to make the change that says if you are publicly lynching someone, you will be convicted in murder. That shift, that build of political power has not yet happened in our movement. Because that power has not been fully built up, yet we can fully expect, given historical analysis and given social movement science, we fully expect a non-indictment of murder or non-indictment of killing of the officer who killed Tony Robinson.
Right.
And based on that, and based on that historical analysis, based on those current trends and conditions, and based on what's actually happening, and I'm sure many folks are paying attention, but based on what's happening with the police department and also in communities, we also know that a fair and a just investigation will not happen.
Yes.
And what we also have learned from observing other places like Ferguson, New York, LA, and many other places, is not only don't we expect a fair local investigation, but we also cannot rely on a fair federal investigation. We have not yet seen the federal government act on the side of the black community against police departments. And so according to that trend, we do not expect that either. So it is now that Young, Gifted, and Black, want to stand up?
YGB.
So therefore, Young, Gifted, and Black, Freedom Inc. folks locally, nationally, and internationally, we call for an independent investigation led by the international human rights bodies.
Yes.
Specifically, we are calling on the United Nations Human Rights Council and the Organization of American States Inter-American Commission on Human Rights to initiate and conduct a dual-track investigation in Madison, Wisconsin. The first would be a completely independent investigation into the murder of Tony Robinson by Madison Police Officer Matt Kinney. And second would be an independent investigation into the gross racial disparities suffered by black people in Madison, including the manner in which the police served as an occupying force of the black community.
Yes.
So the use of, I'm sorry, is standing cool?
Stand up, sister.
So the use of the United Nations or international bodies to advance black liberation or to advance black struggle is not a new concept. So there are a couple examples in which we've seen the interaction of local black organizing within the United States with matching or pairing or using international law or framework or treaties or bodies actually help advance the struggle. So the United Nations was founded in 1945. The National Negro Convention was founded in 46, and in
47.
Was it 47? Actually, yeah, in 47, there was an official complaint which Du Bois and the NAACP put forth, and in 51, that complaint or that charge of genocide was delivered to the United Nations. And that actually, along with all of the on-the-ground work organizing and many other things, was a key piece of helping to elevate what was happening to black people, particularly around lynching, and actually was a key piece or a significant piece in helping to abolish the institution of lynching. Another example in which we've seen local organizing, black organizing, be paired with international law or international bodies is the work that Malcolm X was doing. And in '63, Malcolm X said, we cannot expect the same country, the same group of people who are actively acting out violence against us to be the same people who will stop and hear our cries and stop that violence against us. So that's when Malcolm X made the call and said, black people should not be just fighting for civil rights. Instead, we need to elevate and fight for human rights.
That's right,
we need to go to a higher law, a higher body, a higher court, and to a bigger audience, in this case, not just the nation, but the entire world, to help further the black structure. The black struggle. And that's exactly what Young, Gifted, and Black intends to do here. And so our action steps toward getting there.
All power to the people.
All power to the people.
So we are asking a couple things from our community, which are you guys, and we appreciate you. And we're asking you to sign the petition for the demand at iam.colorofchange.org or on our website. So we're asking again for you to complete our petition.
What's our website?
Again, I'm asking you guys to complete our petition to request the presence of UN and the request of American States Inter-American Commission on Human Rights. Our website is www.ygbcoalition.org, and this is our website behind us. Thank you. And we are also asking that everybody spread the word and that you guys show up and show out the day that the non-indictment decision is made. And we will be meeting at Williamson Street at the scene where Tony Robinson took his last breath.
Yes.
People from across the country, we have been in contact with people across the country, National Network, moving towards Black liberation and organizing for the Black liberation. So people from across the country will be joining us in our future actions, and we'll be standing in solidarity with people across the country. They have reached out to us, and they are watching Madison and will be responding accordingly. So we'll have people coming into the city of Madison to support justice for Tony and Tony's family and the Black Lives Matter movement. So we appreciate that. So we will keep you updated. Please visit us on our website for all events, or also visit us on Facebook, Ferguson TO Madison, Ferguson to Madison. You can also reach us at fergusontomadison@gmail.com. And we also have a phone number now, which is listed on our website, and I don't know that by heart yet. So again, we just want to thank you for coming out and supporting us and listening to us. And we have a lot of work to do, and we ask that you join us in that work. We cannot get it done without you. We do have people power. Our youth are standing up to the challenge. Our youth have been organizing and mobilizing. Our youth are taking the lead, and we're asking you to do the same. Thank you again for coming out. YGB.
YGB.
Questions if anybody has questions. I was ready to end it. Sorry.
Are there any questions? Here?
Oh, I just want you to repeat the website where the petition is.
Oh, okay. The petition is located on two different websites. iam.colorofchange.org. That's the letter I and then am.colorofchange.org. And our website is YGBcoalition.org.
I just wanted to ask, in reference to what I think is referred to as sometimes the Michael Bell Law. It was a law that was passed in Wisconsin just a few days before Dontre Hamilton was murdered that says that any officer involved shooting requires a quote-unquote independent investigation. And this has gotten a lot of attention around the country, and it's often characterized as a law that has created conditions for actually truly independent investigations, but I know there's a lot of criticism of that law and its shortcomings, and I'm wondering if you can elaborate or explain why that law is not sufficient to have a fair and independent investigation.
Awesome.
So briefly, though it is a step in the right direction, it doesn't address the root issue. We don't, as a community, don't view that investigation as being truly independent, because many of the folks doing that investigation and that institution is still connected to the same institutions, the same systems that the police are connected to. And two, it doesn't solve one of the root issues, which is power. We as the community should be able to hold the police accountable. So we as the community should be a deciding factor, a leading factor, in being able to judge and give input as to what happened. So that is why it's not good enough.
So I wanted to provide an opportunity for you guys to just talk a little bit about what may be misconceptions of the Young Gifted and Black group. There are lots of people in our community who feel that your approach is negative, that, and I'm not speaking for myself, these are things that I've heard, and I want to give you the opportunity to respond to that, that your approach is negative, that you seem to be coming from a violent, unsafe place with your message, that you are encouraging youth to be violent or do things that are not necessarily constructive in this case. Can you talk a little bit about what your approach is and how it is constructive for African American youth and important for them to follow your movement?
Thank you.
Can people hear me without the mic?
Yeah, just use it for
Okay.
me now. Yeah, just repeat it.
They hear that? Okay.
Yeah, just speak up loud.
So it's important to understand social change makers in a social movement context. So we, right now, Madison is like, we love Dr. Martin Luther King. Madison is thrilled with Dr. Martin Luther King, just had a really big, beautiful ceremony at the Capitol to honor Dr. Martin Luther King. But actually, while Dr. Martin Luther King was doing the work that we love and honor and appreciate Dr. King for, Dr. King was called violent several times. Dr. King was viewed as a troublemaker. Dr. King was seen as being irrational, as being disruptive, as not doing the things that people thought how Dr. King should have behaved. That same analysis applies here. 40 years from now, 50 years from now, I think people are going to be saying, Young Gifted and Black is such a wonderful group. They've done some really important. They've done some really important work, and our actions, I think people will talk about with the same sort of energy and excitement and proudness that they describe the sit-ins, that they describe the boycotts, that they describe the marches, all of which at that time were deemed inappropriate, ridiculous, not right, violent. I think that is the same sort of thing we see happening here. I think people who are change makers or freedom fighters are often demonized. Like many of us in this room may say, oh, we value Angela Davis. The same story applied to her 40 years ago when it was her who was experiencing that. So we as Young Gifted and Black, we use our people power.
That's right. That
is what we use, that is what we have. And so yes, we disrupt the violence that the state is doing. We are not the creators of that violence. The violence happened on March 6th, Friday night, when Tony Robinson was gunned down. The violence did not happen when I took up my community's power and my community's pain and I protested in the streets.
A quick quote or half a quote that I remember from Martin Luther King that said, the stumbling block for Negroes are not the KKK, but the white moderate, who is more concerned with order than justice, who prefer a negative peace, which is the absence of tension, to a positive peace, which is the presence of justice. And we are here to demand justice, and that's it and that's all. Thank you.
You talked earlier a little bit about citizen participation being essential to justice. There's been some talk about instituting a civilian review board for situations like these officer-involved shootings. What do you think of that?
Thank you for your question.
I think civilian review boards are, once again, an attempt to move in the right direction, but they're not enough. So once again, the root issue here is that the community does not have power to actually hold the police accountable, which can include hiring and firing them, creating their determining their priorities, their practices, and other things. And the same is true if the civilian review board is there. And so we need more than that. We need true accountability, which requires that the Black community and other communities have power, actual real power, to be able to hold the police accountable.
Any more questions?
I'll ask one more.
Sure.
So one of the reasons that I came today is because I read in an email that one of the goals and objectives of this, one of the goals of this press conference was to talk or to learn what the Young Gifted and Black group proposes as action steps after an anticipated not guilty verdict or non-indictment happens. So what is that plan, and what do you guys want? What are you going to do, and what is your desired response from the community?
Okay, I just want to remind us that the statement that M made was very exact. We are taking up our charge with the United Nations. We are taking up our charge with the Organization of American States Inter-American Commission on Human Rights. We are bypassing local authority and taking it to international authority. We realize that we will get no justice through local officials' investigation. We realize that federal government is part of the same system that is oppressing us. It's part of the same system, the same criminal justice system. Federal FBI have killed more Black people than local police. So we have to surpass that and take it to the next level. And that is our plan, and that's why we have asked you to support us in our plan and sign the petition. Again, the petition is located at iam.colorofchange.org and on our website, YGBcoalition.org. And to come up and show up in the street with us and attend our forums and political education forums. Thank you.
it's really good to hear you talk about those who prefer order to justice, and about how the status quo seems determined to stay the status quo no matter how much attention is being paid right now on these issues that you're talking about. Is there any way that you can tell, looking forward to the next month or so, what real reform or decision will need to have been made by someone in authority in order for you to know that they're not just blowing smoke? Like look at after the riots in LA in the 90s, the whole nation came together and made all kinds of promises that barely any of them were even half kept. So how are you guys going to know whether or not what you're doing is working, and whether you may want to become slightly more rude or demanding?
Well, I would just first say that what we're doing is working, and that's why you're all in this room right now. I would also like to add that YGB had a small win, and that was getting the jail taken off the table. So I have to say that we are moving in the right direction with our people power. We have plenty of supporters that have been coming out and supporting us, and we appreciate that, and I'll let M extend that.
So we will measure the willingness to do the right thing, so to speak, by those in power, by the difference in the disparities.
I know that.
So when there is no longer an 11-to-1 disproportionality or disparity arrest rate amongst blacks to whites, that's how we'll know the police take seriously the end to structural racism within the police department. When there is no longer a roughly 5% black population in the county and a close to 50% black population in the jail, that's when we'll take seriously the county's efforts to end racial disparities. So that is going to be our measure of those in power who are going to
Along with getting the attention, along with the petition, just getting the attention of the UN and American states, what kind of channels, or how do you do that? What's the next step of getting that attention?
So there are a couple of things. So one, there are 3 bodies that we are going to target the United Nations to help us further this along. That is ICER, which is the International Convention on Eliminating Racial Disparities. It's CAP, the Convention Against Torture, and UPR, which is the Universal Periodic Review, and that takes place in May. And I attended ICER in August, this past August, and so we'll continue to target those particular committees. In addition to that, we have a team of people, both local, national, and international, who are working on the mechanisms and working on the actual strategy to most effectively target those committees. But that's what we're doing. We're going to continue action, applying pressure, and demanding accountability, as well as taking a strategic approach to all of the committees to bring about that change.
Any more questions?
I don't need a microphone, I just wanted to offer a statement. There are groups around the city working on local change here in a very different way now because of the example set by Young, Gifted, and Black, who address impact before intention. And that is something that I recently was facilitating a meeting where a member of YGB was present, and they completely reversed the agenda to start with impact. And it totally changed how we are going about this. And I've never been involved in a group in this city working on issues of this nature, addressing them in that way. And so the impact that you are having on this city and the way little groups are working around the city, and using your example, is more significant than I think even perhaps you are aware of right now. And I want to express my gratitude. On that bill, and I want to say that exactly the way I'm addressed it, impact. You know, there is a civilian group in this city that has more power than any other police and fire commission in the nation. They don't use their power, so it's really all about attention. There's no impact. And so it's the way that there's so much learning to be done here. Our city officials, I hope, are paying attention, real attention to what you're saying, because Dane County truly could lead the nation if we address things the way that you are addressing these issues. And I want to extend my gratitude.
Thank you. If not, then thank you for coming out.